It's time to ham up.
Now I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down!
Somehow it's the best.
The YumChunks podcast.
YumChunks!
Welcome everyone to the YumChunks podcast. I may or may not be your host, Matt Chewy. With me today is Sean Davis, Ryan Davis, Vince Rizzo, and Chris Schmidt. All your favorites. Back at it once again. Sean, why don't you take it away?
Who may or may not be the other host.
We're all hosts here, but I'll be the host for now. This is Sean. What's up? Hey, everyone. It's been a while, but YumChunks is here. We're back. You guys have been missing us. I know.
Surprise.
We never stopped existing.
Yeah.
In
we've
your
been
hearts.
We only exist in audio form, though, now. Not visual form.
It's probably for the best.
They don't let us use cameras. Too many people died last time.
Trust us, if you could see what we looked like now, we might sound close to the same, but our looks are
Actually,
horrifying.
that's not even Vince talking. That's Ryan talking. So we are way up.
Just go picture how we looked during Horrorcast during the good old days.
Just take a still frame.
Actually, we'll just put a still frame of us from Horrorcast.
Yeah, on the YouTube one.
And superimpose Chris there.
Remember us how we were, not how we are.
Anybody listening right now is watching us on YouTube because there's no way anyone will find us on iTunes or any of the other places. So if you're listening, thanks for not unsubscribing to our channel after 2 years of nothing.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So how are we doing today?
We totally didn't just ignore all those Facebook posts being like, you haven't talked to your community in forever.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you know what was nice? I was talking to Sean Ganka the other day, and he was like, hey, one of my interns talked about Coracast and said he liked you guys a lot. I was like, hey, that's nice.
We're still appreciated.
I guess
We're
so.
all these
Inside
years.
of the Nick Animation
Somebody
Studios.
anyway.
We're a legacy, guys.
No, kind of legacy.
A household name.
Well, guys, we did it. All right, see you next
Well,
week.
Anyway.
it's been literally over 2 years. The last thing I think the channel put out was the Mouseology that Matt did for
It was the Star Wars
Star Wars
Force Awakens Mouseology that ended with, in a few weeks from now, I'll have a part 2 of this episode.
What happened to that? Where was I? I was trying to find it, and
I actually have gotten a lot of comments on that video still, still waiting on part 2, so,
one day.
Part
I
two
don't
is
know,
really
I'll
The
get
Last
to that.
Jedi.
Yeah, Last Jedi's out now. Actually, it is. There have been 3 Star Wars films released since our last content on YumChunks. That's kind of crazy.
yeah. Why don't we... I'll get back to that. Why don't I get back to that? I'll get back to that.
Oh,
I
that's
will.
good.
But why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is we're doing and why we're doing this?
So we're doing a podcast. Hopefully you realize that by listening. But we decided that we wanted to be back. We wanted to start doing some more stuff. It's been a while, and everyone's grown up now. We're all big boys. We're all big boy adults, and we have lives and families and jobs and stuff. So it's just hard to get together for filming or other projects, and with podcasts being what they are, it just made the most sense. And so here we are. We're going to try this out. This experiment, it may fail or it may rocket to the moon.
No, not that far.
Oh, okay.
The video production is difficult. Even
Yeah.
low quality video production is difficult to coordinate and organize and get 5+ people with careers all in the same spot to film on the same day. It's not easy to do anymore. So,
But with just the audio is a lot easier setup, and the potential for doing it remotely in different places allows us to have these sorts of conversations that we like doing. And maybe no one will listen, but that's okay because we like doing it still. Mm-hmm. So they'll be there if you guys want to listen. So that's the idea. It's going to be pretty open. We're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about and what you guys want us to talk about. So it's going to be film, it's going to be TV, it's going to be video games, music, whatever you feel like. Entertainment in general.
That's what we we spend all our time talking about entertainment anyway. So
might as well do it and let other people listen.
Beg people to listen to it.
That was always the idea. We thought maybe they'll want to look at us too, but we realized no, they don't want to look at us.
We have pretty good mics though, so I think it'll still pick up.
Pick it up.
All right, can you guys hear him dancing right now? He's actually doing backflips at the moment.
And of course, anytime there's something out there, we'll report on any Avatar core stuff because that's always relevant and
Oh
good
man,
too.
there's been so much of that today.
I know, there's been so much.
Coracast,
But yeah, it's all good. And like I said, if there's anything you guys are interested in, want to have us talk about, then we'll be definitely looking for your guys, suggestions and recommendations too.
Yeah, it's whatever. It's a free for all. No rules.
Yeah. But in the meantime, what have people been up to? Hey Vince, what do you got? You got some little things with you.
I got a lot on my plate. It's not just a plate; it's a buffet of humans.
Oh no!
This is
is
taking
cannibal
a
now.
turn.
I am a
You're
cannibal.
not supposed to talk about this on the internet.
Wow.
So Sean, what have you been up to?
It's been 4 years, man. Things have changed.
High in
Wait.
protein.
2 years.
He's been a cannibal while he was at CarCast.
Oh God.
I have for 4 years. I have been.
When demon, I think it was pretty obvious.
There's video evidence of that. Okay, so I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl.
Sorry, ladies.
Yeah, I'm married and I work full time now. I was working while we were doing Courtcast, but now I'm just working like all the time. So I rarely have time to really do anything other than work and take care of the kids. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to.
And it's not a joke. He really has 2 kids.
No, I really do have 2 kids.
Go back and watch some Courtcast episodes, and then imagine that person having 2 kids.
It's how I cry myself to sleep at night. No, that's not true. I like them.
I don't imagine you don't get much sleep at night.
Sorry, Paige. We were holding a gun to him to save his life.
What else? Chris, what are you up to?
I also adopted a family off the streets.
Yeah, poor Japanese family.
Wait, are you insinuating Vince's kids aren't his own?
I think that was what he was saying. Man, that's strange because I literally pulled my child out of its womb, so I would think that that's gotta be mine.
It could have been on the street.
You can never
it
know
could have been
these days.
There was I did blink before that happened, so there could have been like a little switcheroo there.
Hey, things happen fast, man.
People are
They do.
weird these days.
Like how old your kids are now. Things happen fast.
They do. But I want to get back to your point about adopting a Japanese family.
I found a lone Japanese family online, and I figured, hey, they seem like a family to buy.
This is the
The thing is that this is not too far outside of the realm of truth.
Yeah, it's
I'm peppering truth in. That's
Yeah.
how, so you discern what the truth
we have
is.
cannibalism and owning people. But Chris is living with his girlfriend and her son.
Yeah, and then so I picked that up recently, and that's been keeping me pretty busy. I picked that up.
Like you picked it up like a
It's
video
like a hobby,
game,
you know. It's just a hobby on the
Pick that
side.
up as a bad habit.
And then I got a position working full time at Ready at Dawn Studios up in Irvine, California. So it's a game development studio, and that's been the rest of my life.
Yeah, if you've ever played any Oculus Echo Arena, that's Chris.
That'll-
Chris did all of it himself.
From scratch.
Yeah.
We'll get back into that later in our main discussion.
Oh, sure. Oh, will we
Will we?
now? Intriguing.
And then ask us about that.
All right. Matt, what about you? What you doing? How many boys you got?
I'm doing a little dance.
Nobody can tell that you're dancing on this. I can
They
tell.
can, they can now.
Oh.
Well, yeah, it's been 2 years since we did anything. I was working on Mouseology, and then I wasn't. No, I'm actually for real teaching now. I was working in stage tech, like right around the time we stopped doing YumChunks stuff. I was working on plays and stuff, and now I'm teaching stage tech for high school. So my whole life is working on plays and stuff like that. So I've been busy with that, and I started that job a few months after I published my last episode of Mouseology, the one about Star Wars, where I then immediately promised a sequel to. But yeah, we were finishing up Corecast, and I wanted to have another like creative outlet project to work on. That I'd been wanting to do that Disney project for years, even before YumChunks. But now like everything I do is a creative project, so it's kind of I just haven't really had the hours, the time in the week to work on it. But I want to bring it back eventually. I have ideas. It might not, if it ever comes back, it probably won't come back in the same form. But I've got ideas on how to revive it. But we'll see. We'll see which way the wind blows.
And you're leaving out, and what's happening in July? There's a thing going on.
Oh, that's not important.
Gotta edit that out. May listen
As
to
our
this.
main editor. So Matt is
Since Since the last time anyone's seen or heard from me online, I've gotten engaged, and we got our wedding date. It's July 7th this summer, and that's all. So I'm planning a wedding too. So that's all good and swell and everything. Gonna have our honeymoon in Catalina, and that's what's gonna happen. It's gonna we just bought
I
a
feel
car.
the energy coming out of him.
And the winner
describing
of
his
the
life.
of the next YumChunks contest gets invited to the wedding.
Yeah.
What?
Well, if they really like us, you've given them your name, your wedding date, and the venue, so they know exactly where to go.
I don't think
To
I gave
murder
them-
you.
I gave them-
Well, yeah, well, it's
Where
going to
is
be
that?
an Encinitas
July 7th,
Botanical
Matt
Gardens.
Chewy
No!
Oh, God. What if people actually... Okay. But yeah, so... And Ryan.
Yeah, I'm still around. I'm working. I don't know. Well, I got a job.
Good job.
I don't know if I had this job last time we
did.
recorded. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Anyway, I'm
You
continuing.
probably moved up since then, though.
Yes, I'm working at a biomedical company, biotech industry in Southern California, where I make devices for diabetics to monitor their diabetes.
You're a science.
I'm a science
Man.
and I make some science every day.
Man, helping people live.
I'm helping people to live.
Yes.
Hopefully, and that is the only news that you've missed since I've been away from YumChunks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Good.
Sean, what
Did
have
it.
you been up to?
Been, like, eating a lot of soup. Yeah.
I mean, you get a can of mushroom chicken and you put it in a pan
Yeah.
with rice and chicken cutlets.
Pretty good.
You bake it; it turns into real good. You can meal prep that for like a week.
Oh, there's so many things to explore with liquid, like...
You got the
Food.
Carl Weathers.
See
guy
in there?
Got a stew
Got
going.
stew going.
Other than all of your soup-related
Yeah.
exploits,
I'm still working at Naughty Dog, the video game studio, and we've released 2 games since I've last done any YumChunking. Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Lost Legacy. So maybe some of you have played that. A lot of crazy overtime and work, but it was all fun, all good. And then, some traveling here and there. Went to Japan, went to Europe, and what else did we do?
Left
I
a
don't know.
trail of blood in
Yep.
your wake.
I'm not allowed back in those countries. But now we're back and we're here and we're ready to go. So today, each episode, we're probably going to find something to talk about that, is relevant for this week. Maybe a movie review, maybe it'll be a game, maybe a TV show, but as appropriate, a movie just came out this week that I feel like kind of taps into a lot of the culture and kind of entertainment that we all like to enjoy and do. We do things. And that movie is Ready Player One. And so we're going to talk about Ready Player One on episode 1. Ready episode 1. So let's talk about Ready Player One. Ready Player One, we all saw it this week. Came out on Thursday.
Based off the hit book by Clive Owens.
Yeah. Who knew he can write about pop
At all.
culture?
Or even
No, they
Clive Custer, General
film-
Custer.
directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Ernest Cline, and what was the other screenwriter?
Zach Penn,
Zach Penn.
who did he's done a bunch of comic book stuff from what I recall.
Okay.
Like, I think he worked on the script for like Watchmen and stuff like that. So.
I was
Zach
thinking
Penn.
cow pen.
Yeah, not that way.
That seems weird enough to be true, though. doesn't
actually, it does.
Yeah, that's what but it's based on the book by Ernest Cline, who came out. The book Ready Player One came out in 2011, I believe. Also, of the 5 of us, 4 of us have read the book. So we're approaching this from the perspective of someone who people have read the book. Vince has not, right? Vince, you
No, I have not.
But that's only because he's illiterate.
Can you confirm for us in a signed statement that you have not watched or read the book? You can't watch the book either. You can't stare at it.
Sign it for the
while
people listening.
That's the signing sound.
Beep boop. Beep bop.
Perfect. You have it legally.
There you go.
There you have it. You heard it here, folks.
Um,
Oh boy, we're gonna be able to say you heard it here first. This is a great. This is a great outlet for that.
Yeah, I didn't read the book. I didn't want to. I honestly had no excitement, like, really going into the movie just based off the trailers. It just didn't really wow me. But I would say out of the 5 of us, I probably enjoyed it the most, ironically enough.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that, get our opinions, but
Nobody cares about your opinion right now.
Keep
I
your
know that.
opinions in your pocket.
we're analyzing this film devoid of any subjectivity, all right? We're purely analytically analyzing. No, let's not do that. That's boring. But yeah, so I guess we'll just kind of go around and give our general thoughts about it. We will avoid spoilers for the first part, but we do want to give a warning that we'll probably be getting into specific spoilers later on in the discussion.
We will.
Yeah, so we'll try to give a warning. We'll give a warning ahead of time when that will be. So until you hear that warning, you'll be safe. But just a heads up that in the length of the discussion, there will be spoilers.
Something in our kitchen is about to kill us.
There is a snake. In
Ooh, a snake. Snake master.
They're going to hear us be eaten alive. That's kind of cool.
This
I mean, assuming the raptor then takes the audio file, edits and uploads.
edits it, publishes it, uploads it to YouTube. All right.
All in Kingdom.
Great.
So yeah, let's get to it. Ready Player One. What do people think? Vince, well, let's go with you. Vince, you liked it.
Yeah, I liked it.
Well, you heard it here first. Vince liked it.
I had an enjoyable time with it. I felt it's hard for me to not like a Steven Spielberg movie because I feel like he always like makes a movie that just like it's a good escape. Like if you're going into that movie for just like a visual experience to where you're like, God, I had a terrible day working at Costco with all those stupid members yelling at my face.
Just theoretically,
An example. That could have been anybody, not me. But what I'm saying is that you could go into the movie after having your horrible life and be like, man, I do want to live in a video game world.
Which was even the point of the movie.
No, if anything, it was the opposite. It was to say you shouldn't live in a video game world as much. You should try to live a real life.
But I think if nothing else, it was relevant to the themes of the movie.
It's escapism.
Yeah. Yes.
It's good escapism is what you're saying, which is what the movie's about, which is neato.
Which is actually so. Wait, the movie is saying escapism is bad, but the movie itself is escapism. Should I not go see?
I don't think. Well, we can get into more details.
Well, yeah.
I don't think it's as black and white as escapism is bad. I don't think that's what they're purely trying to say.
Right.
Okay.
Anyways, Chris? What find your opinions?
Without going into too much detail, I have a hard time saying I disliked the movie. I did enjoy my time watching the movie. I thought it was a pretty decently made movie overall. It'd be hard for Steven Spielberg to go completely off rails and make something horrible. But I think there was a lot of the important stuff from the book that got dropped, and it maybe focused a little too much on the nostalgia elements of the book for the movie. So overall, I'd say it was a good-ish movie.
Good-ish. I like it. All right, Matt.
I'm really torn. I'm honestly really torn on this because I feel like I, for the most part, was generally enjoying the ride as the movie was going on. I did feel like towards the end, a couple times I'm like, wow, this thing is still going. It could have ended half an hour ago. But there's a lot of things I liked about it. There's a lot of good things that, like you were mentioning, there's some things they cut from the book, which is always going to happen, but more important things like some character development or backstory or fleshing certain things out that I felt like were not good things to cut out, but there's also things they rearranged and added, which I thought helped in other ways. So it's really a mixed bag for me. I really, I didn't love the book. I enjoyed the book, but so I wasn't like, I'm not going in like, oh, they better do justice to this thing. But I think just overall, I feel like it was a lot. Like, just sum up the way I feel about it, it's just a lot. I felt exhausted afterwards, and now I've had a day to think about it. I'm kind of like, I feel like you sick, like you eat too much. You eat too much candy, and you feel sick later.
Visually, it was a lot, right?
It's a lot.
Storytelling, it's really straightforward.
It's not even just visually a lot. I think the pacing was a lot. It's just kind of like, it just made me feel tired, and I still like I have like a hangover now after watching it a little bit. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. Sean.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I kind of immediately after watching, I think I kind of felt close to kind of not so much tired, but I did feel like it was a kind of a little bit of a mess. But after further reflection, and the more I think about it, the more I think the things that I enjoyed about it really stood out more than the things I disliked. The things that I disliked about it, I feel like I don't remember as much, and they're diminished. And the things that I'm the more I thought about it, the more I started to realize things that they did really smartly with it that I don't think are super obvious. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate it for a lot of those things. And I do think that the Spielbergian-ness of it was really apparent. I think he was the one to direct this, and it shows. However, there's a few parts where it comes across as clunky. And we'll get into those details, but where it's just distractingly clunky for me at certain, and both in character and story in a couple parts, plot, I guess, more specifically. Yeah. And those are the things that kind of distract me, and I feel kind of hurt a little bit. But overall, I think I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the discussion because my opinion after the movie hasn't really changed, but it's kind of interesting to hear that yours has, and that you've warmed up to the film a little bit. And because I definitely walked out of the film. Maybe not disappointed is the right word, but just definitely not loving it. And yeah, I kind of share, Matt, your feelings about being almost like not exhausted by it, but you don't walk away from the movie having like it. When you walk away from like a really exciting film, your like heart rate increases, and you walk away more full of life. Yeah. You know, that's why a lot of reasons why we go to films, right? To escape and that kind of thing. But you walk away with kind of like almost like an inspiration just based on the art.
Satisfying.
That it yeah,
You're
exactly.
satisfied. You feel
and I didn't walk away with that feeling at all. Mm-hmm. It's obviously a movie that's so referential, right? It kind of opens itself to critiques that it's like, oh, it wasn't true to the source material, and I don't really think that was the distraction for me in this film. I think walking in, I had one requirement in that it captured the mystery that I thought the book had, and the movie didn't do that for me. And maybe that was, wrong of me to kind of get that, but the whole thing was about the chase, and I never felt that chase. So that would be...
I absolutely. Yeah.
And I think I have some other nitpicky things, but I think there are a lot that I did like as well. Mm-hmm. Overall, I would say it's like lower on the totem pole for me, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think walking out of it was hard for me not to feel a little bit disappointed, but I'm surprised it's a film. To me, the more I think about it, the more I appreciate it. It's not, I wasn't going to expect that from this type of film. But before we kind of get into further detail, I think let's just like briefly describe what the plot is, not the full plot, but just the setup. So basically, it's based on the book, 2011, takes place in the near future, semi-dystopian world. Everyone kind of exists and plays in this virtual reality game called The Oasis, developed by this brainiac kind of Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates-ish type of character who develops this fantasy world. And the main character, Wade, is a guy in this world who's hunting for this hidden treasure that the creator of the world has hidden in this game world. And there's a corporate entity that's kind of trying to beat everyone to it so they could control it. That's the basic premise. It's all soaked in pop culture, though. And that was one of the appeals of the original book, is that it was all referential, and it was just specifically about 80s, late 70s, early 90s, but mainly 80s nostalgia and pop culture. And that's kind of like the flavor of what the feel, the visuals, what your references, that gives kind of, I think that's what a lot of people initially latched onto the book, why the book was so loved. And it's interesting how in the last couple of years, there's been a little bit of a pushback against that. And I think a lot has happened in the last couple of years, just culturally, where we're at. And part of that is a result of that. So it's interesting in a book that years ago has not changed, obviously, but just the culture around it has changed. And you could see how much the opinions towards the same piece of work has changed. And I think the film, actually, one of the reasons that I think I appreciate the film is because I thought they did a really pretty good job overall of being able to skirt all of that. To me, I thought the film did a really good job of not succumbing to all the things that the book can be, depending on your opinion or whatever, but can be criticized for those cultural things. I thought the movie did like amazing job of not doing that, right?
For some of them.
Not some of them. It's not like perfect or anything, but for all of those issues, I thought they did a surprisingly good job of like, no, it's not about gatekeeping.
I did feel like the movie also came out at a time when like nostalgia is just a huge thing. I mean, like a lot of the references and stuff, like it made me think of like shows I'm really into right now, like Stranger Things. I mean, like that's all about 80s nostalgia, and I mean,
Yeah, almost to a fault.
Almost to a fault.
I kind of feel like that concept in itself is also receiving pushback, in that
No, I agree.
just kind of the retro throwback flavor that everything's having. You know, not just like Stranger Things, but like it.
yeah,
You know, it seems like that movie there was an attempt at trying to emulate the Stranger Things success and do that era and style, and I feel like there's the pushback is kind of there for.
Well, it's a fine line you have to draw. You have to learn what made those movies so great and try to add your own flair to it. So it's a balance of like paying homage and ripping off, and you have to somehow find that middle ground. And I feel like some movies do it better than others. This one I feel like is destined though to divide people in terms of did it over reference all these things, or was it just ripping off all these other titles?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think there's a kind of, like you said, a line between playing an homage or just kind of being exploitive of what that is. And I think that's maybe one thing that the book might be criticized for, is that it's not being done in the style of these exactly. It's more just kind of referencing them and kind of trying to get street cred, or not really street cred, just that's what the author's.
You're banking on the audiences, just like that, whatever
trigger.
the chemical reaction when they see whatever the thing they recognize, they associate those feelings with this thing that's referencing it. Right?
Yeah, and I think the movie does that to a certain extent, but I feel like they did it in a very different way that was both better and worse. Because it felt like the references, it felt like they were very tacked on, but in a way that made them not so integral to everything. It would just be like, hey, I'm talking sentence, 80s reference, talking sentence, 80s reference. And so it was so just like, it was like a preposition. Like I can finish the sentence without adding a preposition to the end, but they chose to add that preposition, which included an 80s reference. And which felt very, very tacked on a lot of times, but I think maybe overall less distracting than it was for the book.
So, I mean, that's one of the main things the more I thought about it, the more I really thought they did a good job with. What I really liked about it, because I agree, for the first part of the film, and I think that was intentional, where the early part of the film, they're showing that those references are almost intentionally groan-worthy, right? There's a conversation,
absolutely.
right?
Agreed.
And it was noticeably less and less as the film went on. And I think that was part of the intent, right? That it was less about, we're referencing these things that you know, and none of them were integral to the plot. None of it did you ever need to know specifically about a thing to know about the plot. Whereas the book, I think the book was much more, all of the challenges they went through in the book were specifically about a piece from the 80s, right?
Right.
And it was about the knowledge of that art.
But
it's very integrated
it was
into the whole
not.
story.
It was about the character of whatever his name was, Halliday. It was about his character, not about the art. Not about this 80s reference itself.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was a really smart decision, and I
think-
like it for that.
I think in the book there's a little bit too much like substituting character and personality for references.
Yes.
Because like even going to the Halliday character, but even the main character in the book, the first few pages of the book is just him rattling off all the things that he knows. Like I spent my childhood playing Pac-Man, and I watched all the John Hughes movies, and I've seen every Spielberg movie, and it's like, this is the time you should be establishing what his character is, what his personality is, but we're just establishing all the things that he knows, so that later on...
And people are getting fooled into thinking that's character building. Like, I like those things. He's
Well,
a cool character.
I guess to be the counter to that, and try not to go too deep since we're still not in spoiler territory, but I actually think that's where the movie failed in a sense, and I think those key pieces, whether you liked it or not, were integral, and they added a lot to Halliday's character. Not like every reference, just like him rattling off, but because they did that so often, I felt like his character was way more defined in a sense. Because I could tell, I mean, I've talked to people who are passionate about their decades and stuff like that they're from, the things that they like, and it's like, I know this person. And that's something that I feel like the movie, because it toned back on all that stuff, really lacks. So, I mean, my feelings on that, it goes deep into the characters of the movie and all this other stuff. And like Ryan said, the chase, like, I think we'll get into that later.
You know that person, but would you cast that person as the protagonist in an action adventure? That doesn't make for an interesting main character.
Well, we'll get into that once we get into spoilers. I'll defend my point there.
I guess. I guess to kind of touch on Chris's thing, so this might be a split, but I honestly felt like, and maybe I was fooled by the nostalgia, but I definitely did not connect with the Wade from the movie. I did from the book. The character from the movie, I didn't know who he was.
Exactly.
I had a more connect. Like, I think.
I
don't
won't
know.
disagree.
He
I
was
won't
he was
disagree.
he was
Yeah.
too much of a John Doe in the movie.
Agreed.
Not to go too
I
far.
kind of think he
but-
is in both. But
A little bit.
I wouldn't
And
disagree with that
I kind
either.
of think that's part of where the pushback comes from.
But in
and
the
it's
book,
not-
he's kind of like an egotistical jerk, right? And that's something that in today's modern culture of online and everything like that,
True.
we know those people, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm basically that person in real life as it is.
Oh, I'm
Like,
glad you said it.
I get opinions on things and things I like and things I don't like, and I
like
hold
Kyle.
those opinions. Yeah, and
So, I mean, I do think that to me the bigger faults of the film were less about those world building issues and the flavor and the content, and it was more about the characters. Most of the issues I had with the film were about the character, and I agree that was one of the biggest issues I had was just Wade as a character did not. And I'm not necessarily. I don't think he was necessarily better in the book, but I will say that as a character in the film, he was pretty bland.
Yeah.
Right?
I think part of it, maybe why you connect more in the book is you spend more time with him and you
Yeah.
spend more time with his internal monologue.
Yeah.
You know, but I also just feel like either way, it's self-insert fiction. It's a lot. It's
Yeah,
a lot
no,
of
it's
people are making
definitely-
comparisons this to like Twilight. I think that's like a
Partially
pretty
your
apt
point,
comparison
yeah.
because I think it's meant to say, hey, I'm a nerd in my teens to late 20s, and I like video games, and I like pop culture, and I wish I could meet a pretty girl online, and I wish I could this thing, and I wish I could literally
Yeah.
save the internet. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree.
you know,
Like, I think all those things were. I've definitely he was the everyman intentionally. It wasn't
Yeah.
like he wasn't. But I do
Yeah.
think there's a way to do that where a character come across as the everyman, but still interesting, and you understand him, is more empathetic, and has depth to him, and it isn't come across as bland. Like all stories, like Luke Skywalker is. I wouldn't say Luke Skywalker is bland, but you could still call him a representative of kind of the every person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue that, but in any case, but as someone who hasn't read the book though, Vince. I mean, we're all comparing it kind of to the character in the book to an extent. What did you feel is just like the film on its own? The character mean.
He didn't really have a character. Now, let's put this in context for the Vince that watched the movie.
Let's do
okay,
it.
it's 10:30 p.m. at night after a long day of work. Okay, 20 minutes of previews. We're looking at almost 11 p.m. that I'm going to do a 2.5-hour movie. Sitting down on a nice reclined couch with some 3D glasses over my actual glasses.
so what you're telling us is you fell asleep and you didn't watch
No,
it.
I watched the whole movie. No, I watched the whole movie. But honestly, he is in the real world for what? Maybe a minute before he gets to the Oasis. And then after that, you're just like, well, I guess I kind of just want to see what the Oasis is like from now on. I don't really care about his character. And he doesn't. You don't really learn anything about his character. And then like, oh, I had some bad things happen to my... I don't have parents.
One thing that I wanted to point out that I think this is a very subtle thing, but it's very important. The book is about nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
About. You could say the theme or the message might
Sure,
be less
right.
about. But the book is all about nostalgia. It's all about specifically 80s nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
The movie, I think it's really important, is not about that. The movie is about pop culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people going into this film going, it's going to be about 80s pop culture and 80s nostalgia. And obviously they play up those parts a little bit, but the film is they never really specifically reference this is about 80s stuff. It's all about Halliday's character and what was important to him. And so some of those things are obviously, but the film itself, and I think that's a really smart move because again, because it being less about nostalgia, like you were talking about earlier, how nostalgia is very relevant now, and there's almost this backlash against like these nostalgic things, and even going to Last Jedi, right? You go forever about nostalgia and how it relates to Last Jedi. But I think it's a really subtle thing, but really important that this film was not about nostalgia.
I agree, and I think the fact that it was about pop culture, it's a dangerous game to play because pop culture is such a broad concept. It's kind of in the same way that I have, over the past few years, lost interest more and more in Comic-Con because it's become a pop culture convention and less of a comic convention, and it's too broad. There's too many things that it doesn't stay focused. Why are you guys looking at me like I'm crazy? So they don't know that you're looking at me. I think this. No, I'm gonna somehow
I'm
make
not
this work.
disagreeing with you, but it's funny. Like
I didn't know you were such a comic book aficionado.
I like comic books.
No, keep going.
But anyway,
keep
Yeah,
going.
keep on.
it loses its focus. I can't tell what it's trying to actually reference, or if it's trying to reference everything that's ever existed that's entertainment. And because of that, it's like, well, you're gonna have to sacrifice character development for visual flair.
I guess like on a surface level, you look at the appeal of the book and I guess the movie, and it's like, what if we got all of these different IPs and just smashed them all into the same thing? Wouldn't that be crazy? Wouldn't it be nuts if we had Star Trek and Harry Potter and Star Wars and Jurassic Park and just one story had all of this stuff in it? Like, and I feel like on a surface level, that's kind of where it's at, right? Like that's like the.
Then go see the Lego movie.
I was gonna say that it reminds me of Lego.
Well, perfect.
Movies.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
see, that movie didn't take itself seriously, and that's what made it great.
You guys, okay, so once again, just to counter a little bit of what you guys are saying, though, you keep referring to the point of the book as being 80s nostalgia.
I don't know if that's the point of the book.
But that's what you guys have been
I'm saying it's
basically
about.
saying.
That's different than that's the point of the book.
Because
I think
I
the
don't-
point of the book is similar to the point
Because
of the book.
I do think the book isn't about 80s nostalgia. It has 80s nostalgia in it for sure, and that's a focal point. But I don't think it's about that in any regard, really.
Well, I mean, I don't know. About's an ambiguous term. But I'm saying that the knowledge of 80s nostalgia is integral to the plot and character and development of that book.
I mean, I don't have any grand 80s nostalgia, but the book I was able to understand.
Well, yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. I'm just saying that, like, more so than the film, it references maybe some things like that, but it's not integral to the development of a character. Wade's character arc is dependent on his knowing 80s trivia and 80s nostalgia. That's not true in the movie.
How come
But that's where, I mean, trying not to get into spoilers.
Okay, well, okay,
let's spend a lot of time going.
Yeah, let's just go. We're gonna get into
Okay,
spoilers at this point. So, at this point, continue at your own risk if you haven't seen the film or read the book, because we're gonna get into the specifics here. We'll try to put a timestamp. I don't know how we do timestamp on podcasts.
YouTube, you can do it, and other things.
We'll figure it out
later.
If
Don't
you want to
worry
pick
about
up
it.
later after
Anyways,
this
if you're listening to this and you
We
don't want
figured
to
it
be
out by
spoiled,
then.
stop listening. Skip to
Or
the
look
end.
for a timestamp that may or may not be there.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's talk about the characters.
Okay.
Because I
Click
think,
on the link
I think
below.
that's really what it's going to right here, where we were going.
Yeah.
The characters. So, you have Wade Wilson. He has all...
That's not his name, right?
Deadpool.
That's Deadpool. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Wade Watts.
Watts.
You have Wade Watts, Wade Wilson, and he was clearly his name was based upon. But
Clearly.
anyways, you have
Nobody else in the universe of cinema is named Wade. So
There's
I'm
only
gonna-
two
I'm
Wades
gonna-
ever.
That's a good point.
That
Chris
can't
has a
possibly
point.
be. I'm gonna find out a list of fictional ways. Keep talking.
regardless. So he has all this depth knowledge of Halliday, and in the book, that is his benefit, to his benefit, right? Like he sits there, he has a journal, and he has he does all the research. He pirates all the movies and all the references. So he's studying. He is a student of Halliday. That is something that's very clear, and it's something that you can connect to his character, and you're like, he has this advantage. This is part of his character and what gives him an advantage and what makes him interesting over anybody else, any other Gunter in the movie or the book, right? In the movie, he has what seems like they kind of reference some knowledge to Halliday, but he doesn't actually seem like that strong of a student of anything of what Halliday does other than like his life, which is actually slightly creepy in the way that it's portrayed in the movie with the museum and everything like that. But like it doesn't seem like there's any reason he should have been more special than any other Gunter at that point, right? Like it didn't seem like he really put in any more work than anybody else.
I kind of agree in that he doesn't seem like special, but I think that part of was the intent of that character. I do think he knew more about Halliday. They referenced like how he's done research and he's gone to the museums and stuff. But I think it's less about him. Again, it's less about knowing trivia. It's less about I know trivia, therefore I deserve to win everything. And it's about him relating on a character level, on a human level. And I think that's what I mean when I say I appreciate that more. I think on reflection, I think those things became more apparent the more I thought.
And before we get too far into a different category, I do want to bring this also back to what Ryan was bringing up earlier with the chase, where it's just like in the movie, man, they did not have to work at all for what they achieved. It was given to them, and it's so weird that it would literally take them 5 years to think to go backwards on that race. Like that's not that hard of it. Like whereas like in the book, like because of the deep cuts of the 80s that it required, and it really made you have to stop and think about things. Like, you could see why it would take time, including this, like, the 5-month gap in the middle of the movie where things, like, kind of stalled, or the book.
I think that...
Whereas, like, the movie's, like, resolved in, like, 2 days after they figure out the first clue. It's just like, da-da, everything's super
I mean,
easy.
part of it I feel like is the side effect of the medium that it's being told in.
Yeah, that's what I was
But
gonna
I
say.
understand what you're saying, too.
I think what we needed was more of like a Nick Cage National Treasure kind of thing going on, where he would have, where
It was
he would
more like a treasure hunt. Like, it felt less treasure hunty in
Yes.
the movie, I feel.
Yeah, no, actually,
but-
I maybe wouldn't
which is a
reference that film.
No, but I love that movie so much. Where he talks to himself, but he's like, but this lantern is here, and I have this thing. And then Benjamin Franklin did this thing on Tuesday of 1976, and he had pants. Pants are on the sheet. That's pretty much the movie of National Treasure.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not kidding.
So back to Ready Player One.
There was no National Treasure references in Ready Player One.
That's all this
Also,
opportunity.
why did it stop in 1999 with the references with Iron Giant? That was the farthest it would go.
No, it wasn't.
No,
And that's what I mean, where it's not about nostalgia.
Overwatch,
There was
Tomb
there was
Raider
Halo
was in
stuff.
there,
There was like
Halo. There was a
Yeah.
lot of stuff.
I mean, the most
Okay.
recent thing being Overwatch, right? That's like literally
I think
last
that-
year.
I think that was probably
Yeah.
the most recent.
Yeah.
Or Minecraft is. I
Yeah,
guess
Minecraft is
was
older
in
than
there
that.
too.
But right. Well, anyway, yeah. So to your point, Vince, I would agree. Like maybe the film I would reference, I was thinking of like Da Vinci Code, where like it's still not a great
I-
reference.
The good
when I read
version.
the book,
Oh, how about the book?
that's
How
what
about the book?
I remember, like, it's like the Da Vinci Code if it was for nerds.
Yeah,
That's what I thought
exactly.
the book
And
was.
for me, what I love about that is that there's a sense of urgency about finding these keys, about this quest that you're going on, and it kind of you do relive some of your gamer experiences for anyone that's played a game. In that you're trying to solve something, right? There's a mystery and you're trying to solve it, and there's this chase that gives way. And the book really captured that, and that's what I loved so much. That it felt like every time you get a new clue, you're trying to figure it out with our characters, right? In this movie, like they're just going, and you don't have a chance to ever figure anything out with them. And you know, you get these the movie kind of glosses over a little bit, but they get these clues every time they find a key, right? Mm-hmm. And the clues are supposed to give some little hint and puzzle, but I felt like they move so fast, or they don't really take the time to focus on them and think about or take us into how the characters are thinking. And that also goes back to why I don't feel like I was as connected to the characters.
What?
Because I don't get to be with them as they solve this.
On that thought, to everybody except for Vince at this table, do you remember the way that I thought about this? Because exactly along that line, that moment in the book after the second clue, where he goes off trying to find the second door, right? And then he thinks he finds it, but he actually ends up somewhere else, and then he gets beaten to the door. Mm-hmm. And then that's the first low, really, for our main character. Like,
Yeah.
And then from that point, when the IOIs almost immediately find the third key, and that knocks them way down on the list. And it's like that moment of low, that moment of desperation, like where it's
Yeah.
like, oh my god, this is a race. Like,
Yeah.
that was never once in the film.
I agree that they didn't fall down, but I think that I agree that in terms of the race of of finding the goal and getting to solving the clues, there wasn't as much of a low point in the film. But I will say, I think that they heightened the human low points, right? And I'm not saying that they did this as well, and this is what I mean when I earlier said it's clunky. And going back to kind of what you were saying too about how they did clever clues, I think Spielberg or whoever, but I think rightfully chose this the way it was done. Maybe but not have been great, but instead of it being, oh, they fell down the ladder on the wrong, it was like, oh, someone just died in the real world, or now she's held against her will in the real world. Like, those were stakes I think they put in the movie as opposed to the book. And I think
They change those stakes because
yeah.
doesn't Wade end up like? Isn't he the
Yeah,
one that's?
but
in
he
the
does
box?
it. He goes there
But
on
he goes
purpose.
willingly.
Willingly.
He's like,
Also,
I'm gonna go in
while
there,
we're
yeah.
talking about that, you said people dying.
Yeah.
How crazy was it that they didn't kill Daito?
Yeah, they didn't kill. It's funny because I don't remember him even dying in the book. Like,
Oh,
it's
like,
been
wait,
so long since
I don't
read
remember
it,
that
but-
happening.
I don't want to go
Actually,
to like okay. So another topic I want to talk about was like the sense of grandeur, but we'll get back into that later. It was just the fact that like in the book, like number one, Daito and Sho are in Japan. They're recluse, and there's like this real moment when they're in the middle of a battle. And IOI breaks into Daito's room while he's all alone in the VR headset. He's completely defenseless because he's also like recluse and stuff like that. It doesn't work out every day. Mm-hmm. And they just throw him out the window and kill him.
Yeah, I didn't remember it until someone told me, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that does happen. I completely forgot about that.
Like that
So it was
moment of
interesting.
like, loss, like that was like
Yeah.
beyond the ant, right? Which isn't like that real of a loss. Like the loss of
I will say that was another thing in the movie that was very
Yeah.
clunky. He's like, "Oh, my family's dead."
Back to the Oasis.
but like that feeling of like one of the high five dies, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like that meant a lot to show, and that put like even more stakes against the remainder of the high five. So that was completely missing from the movie too.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
true.
Yeah.
The main point I was trying to make is that the corporation was like a physical threat, but they didn't mentally challenge him. It just felt like Wade was like, in terms of the way that he was thinking, even though he was just like, yeah, I'm just some average run-of-the-mill kid, he was like the chosen one. He somehow knew this. Nobody challenged him in terms of like mentally thinking outside the box, which when everybody in the entire world can play this game, I just find really...
Yeah, I agree that, and I would say even in the book, there's not really a good, that's also
But that
not
goes
very
back to
true.
what I said, right? Is like in the book, it's very clear that he has an edge.
Yeah,
on that
I know.
stuff.
I'm just saying it's not that it wasn't a flaw, or it's not something that shouldn't be noted, but I don't think that was something that was even in the book, so it wasn't like they removed that aspect of it. Kind of going on some of the more clunkier things though. So one of the things, like as much as I feel like this film was better because of Spielberg than it would have been in someone else's hands directorial, there were a few things that felt like, I won't say lazy or sloppy because those are too strong words, but for example, the opening, like before the title, right? It's just this long monologue narrative, and even basic, like just someone who's just a little savvy of film usually knows if you're relying on narrative, that's not a good sign, right?
Show don't tell.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's doing that through the first part of the film, and then title card, Ready Player One. It's like, okay, that was the prologue. I'm willing to, but then it goes on. Like there's so much exposition and such just delivered so just like haphazardly. Just like, look, we're not even going to try to like get you into this world naturally, or
It just happens.
Well,
when they do it.
it's just like, here's what it is.
To defend the Halliday video, that is like an important part of the book. So I mean, that part of the exposition had to happen.
Well, some of it, yeah, I'm not saying like everything, but I'm just saying like for something that I feel like a movie that's so visual, they rely, especially early on just blatant explanations.
What
Just
the
telling
thing
us what
is.
it is. And I think that, I completely agree, and that's one of my biggest, like, more, I guess, technical style flaws of the film. Like, it felt like, let's do some world building here. Let me experience, let me just dive into the Oasis. It's supposed to be completely immersive.
Yeah.
Let me experience that as if I was someone in the Oasis. So, because if anyone who's played VR, it's surprisingly immersive, right? And let the audience try to get that through, rather than just, something that is ancient, just narrative, someone talking and telling you what it is, right? Like,
Right.
let's advance this.
I feel just like the world building overall for the Oasis and the real world was just really weak.
I agree.
I agree.
Like there were a lot of things like, I was asking you this, and I'm like, but I was asking Vince afterwards, like, did you get everything that was going on? Not like it's a super complicated plot, but it's just like there's mostly the things that are like what's at stake here, right? Like Artemis talks about like her family and like how her mom gets like sold into slavery basically, and like that's another thing, like the opening
I didn't get any of
crawl where it's just like it's so rattled off so fast. This is what happened to my mom. She did this and then she was in debt and then that happened and that's what happens in this world. And like I just feel, or how like the Oasis. They don't show people going to school in the Oasis and doing the book stresses they do everything in the Oasis.
Yeah.
Anything that can be done digitally, they do it digitally. It's not just a game. A game is an element of it. That's the game is like the perks for living in a digital world.
Right.
But it's still the world that they live in. And I don't feel like the movie conveyed what the real world or the Oasis.
I'm glad you brought that up.
That is exactly what my sense of grandeur comment was about. I'm glad you brought that up. That's exactly what it is. Like in the book, they stress the fact that inside, this is where people work. This is where people's daily lives are. So
people do stock trading and they do,
like
literally whatever.
Again,
they're 9 to
but they
5
can't eat
here.
fruit.
I don't think the film should be criticized for not having that. I just think the film didn't do a good job of building what the rules of it were. Right.
Yeah.
So the film didn't need to have them all exist.
Well,
You're
even
absolutely right.
beyond that, okay, so another element of the real world in the book is the fact, and then they'd have like a throwaway line, but they don't show it. Like there's a point in the book where they're flat out when he's moving from his old town to Columbus, and he's like, this is like Mad Max level crap here. Like it is a post-apocalyptic world almost. Like it is just like things are so low.
One thing I was thinking that I felt like was not weird, but because the film was not so much about nostalgia and just about pop culture in general, I felt like there was no need to set it in 2045. They could have set it in 2025. There was no need to set it in this like so far-flung future. In a lot of ways, I think it would have been better film, or maybe just be more ambiguous in general. No need to put a specific date to it, right?
Yeah.
And if it's closer to us, we can imagine a world that's not like, other than this physicality of the trailer homes in the stacks. Why was that world any different than, like, I can imagine that in 10 years, right? Yeah. It's not that crazy. Like, just set it in the 2020s, and it doesn't need to be this, like, because with that amount of distance, you're putting, like, this weird sense of, like, why is this world like this? And it creates more questions that you don't need there. None of those things are relevant if you just pretend it's like just imagine our world just slightly different. Like her, right?
Yeah. Also, I think the movie itself would have been significantly more exciting had it taken place directly after when Halliday dies and the competition starts. Like, because the competition had already died out and nobody really even cared. So it's like, okay, why should I care?
Yeah.
If nobody, the rat race wasn't there.
That actually is a really good point, because of what we were talking about earlier about how, like, it feels like everything's just off to the races, literally, because they changed the first task to be a race instead of whatever it was in the book. I can't remember.
The joust thing.
But because it starts off at such a crazy pace, it would make more sense to do that.
And again, I feel like they were latching onto these things from the book that I think probably would have been better off. As many changes that they did make from the book,
they could have.
I think those things were like, there was no need to set in 25. There was no need to have the wait, because in the book it's relevant that there was a time gap because he was younger. As like, just have him have just died and Wade's already in there. Like,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Like those kind of things. That's what I mean when I say things came across as like clunky, and it's just like, that's a weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Lots of
it
weird
feels
things.
like there's an easier, more elegant way to do that.
Talking about the fact that it was clunky and a little bit of the pacing, I feel like this. I mean, it's already such a long movie. It's 2 hours 20, but I feel like the original cut was a lot longer, because I just feel like there were parts that there were weird. The scene goes to this next scene where it feels like there would have been something in between.
Definitely felt like things were cut out.
Yeah.
That's what, like... And it wasn't nothing that was plot dependent, obviously, but I will say it did feel like maybe some character moments could have been... there were maybe stuff they removed. Another thing that one of the things wasn't my least, or was not one of my favorite parts, was I did not buy that relationship in the movie.
Yeah.
I guess
with Artemis and
Wade.
I mean, that goes.
I prefer it in the movie. I prefer
it as a relationship, but I still don't buy it as authentic.
Well, one of the major criticisms of the book is that she's a literal trophy.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hate, it's such build up in the book, and I hate, this is my thing I hate most about the book. It's like, she's like, no, you don't want to know you don't want to see me in the real world because you'll be disappointed. And she just has like a scar on her eye, but she's conventionally attractive in every other way, and that's like built up the entire novel. But like, that's so like, what if what if she was an overweight guy in a basement? Wade would be like, but no.
I like it in the book because it also because of how the book emphasizes its theme. I think a lot better throughout the whole thing about go outside. Other than, I feel like the theme of the movie is literally just spoon-fed to you and only exists at the very end, right? Whereas, like, reality is real.
I think there are things throughout that are more subtle. But...
Where the book is just, like, it does a good job of showing you, like, this is a potential pitfall of falling into, like, this recluse nature that humanity could go in, And I feel like Artemis's character really hammered that home in the book because... Yeah, like thinking so big of such a minor thing would happen if your culture was all built around staying inside in a virtual world is the only way people can.
No, I think it's lazy because I think the author, because it's self-insert fantasy, still needs the girl to be pretty at the end. So it's like, well, we gotta have something that would make her insecure enough to not want to reveal herself, but like
I'll counter
it's
that
not
with the movie. I mean, they made her pretty in the movie. Even worse, they made Wade freaking pretty. In the book,
Yeah.
he's like
Yeah.
a fat, overweight...
I would say in the movie though that they didn't make a point of showing how she was because in the movie she didn't want to show herself because she thought she was ugly. She just didn't want to expose herself because she realized the danger of exposing her.
Which is
real
why
identity.
I'm glad that whole thing was.
Yeah,
scrapped.
I agree with that. In that way,
like
it's better. I just didn't buy the human connections. Like when he says "I love you," it just felt like what, and then and I think she reacts appropriately. Like, what are you talking about? You can't just say that. That's you don't know what you're talking about. And I felt
Granted,
like
that's
that was
after
fine.
she's like basically molesting him.
Yeah, and which I thought was like
Yeah.
weird, but I think she's trying to she has a goal and she's actually doing that on purpose. Which that's why like okay, all that stuff I'm okay with, but then as soon as they enter the real world, they're about ready to kiss and they literally just met each other like 5 minutes ago. And that's where to me it came across as inauthentic. And not only that, there's a scene where she's like touching his hand. She's like, I really think you're the only one who could do this, Wade. It's like, really? Like that? Are you really going with that line? Like it just felt like so on the nose, like almost to the point was like, are they changing her character? Is she going to be working for IOI? Like, because it felt like so fake to me. It's just like that
Agreed.
just comes across as a very fake character moment. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Just, and I think that's kind of goes back to how I felt like I did feel disconnected from those characters. Maybe partly because I didn't get enough of them in the real world before we were introduced to their avatars in the Oasis. And I realize that they're trying to kind of make this indistinction between the characters, right? Like this is the future, you are your avatar kind of thing. But I don't think it ever hit home quite for me. So I feel like I never knew the characters. But so sorry, I want to kind of jump back a little bit to the whole our characters' flaws, right? So in the book, it's like part of what we define as good characters that they have to have flaws, right? What's the lie they believe that they need to overcome to become the hero, right? And I think Wade, right? He has a lack of confidence, right? He's overweight. He's a recluse, right?
In the books.
In the books,
yes.
And I think that did help me establish his character for me. And he works hard to try to like lose weight and stuff, right? There's a whole thing.
Yeah, that's a whole montage.
There's a whole thing, and I feel like that really did. And maybe that's weak, maybe that's not that strong, but it was something.
Well, I do think, again, this is I think something that's a subtle change. On surface level, you're not going to notice it because he does have a flaw in the film, but it's not lack of confidence. It's he doesn't rely on anyone else. He's selfish. You're not, maybe selfish isn't the right word, but he's too centered, right? He doesn't go with the clan. He's all about himself. He goes away from the stacks to always stack and go. Like, there's a lot of small things that it's like always about just him, and his his arc is like, he relies on, it's now I'm part of the team. I'm not going to sign my contract. Like, right, that's his flaw, and he overcomes it. So I do think that he does have a flaw. Now, whether that's a good choice or you relate to it as much, it's arguable. But I don't think it was like, he's a flawless character now, per se.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. I mean,
but could you say that that's a flaw in the terms of the movie? Because literally everyone he partners up with is the exact same thing, and they all resolve it at the exact same time. And
I think it's you could argue the kind of how well they did it. I'm not saying it was a brilliant, way they did it, but I do think that it was apparent that was his arc in the film.
Because in the book, he has that exact same problem. It's just, I think he overcomes it before a lot of other people, where he actually wants to start partnering with people, but they are still kind of standoffish about it, right?
Maybe.
So, like, I felt like it was... I mean, okay, so I guess I'll put my opinions out there as it is. I by no means think the book is like some masterpiece of the world.
That's good.
It's a passable book. It's a good book. It's enjoyable for a read or two. But the movie is lesser than that.
I think, well, this is what I'll say. Like you were saying early on, what I was hoping for from the adaptation was the book. I did really like it when I first read it, but I think after, like we were talking about earlier, as years go on, further reflection, I recognize that it's pretty heavily flawed book. But I do think that it's still fun, right?
Yeah.
You can never, and I think the film, so I was just looking for the film to capture that. Not specific to this or specific to that, but just can you capture kind of the fun of what the Oasis in this world is. And I think by and large, they did that with a lot of flaws, but for me, that's what I mean when I was like, overall, I think I enjoyed it. I'm happy with it because it's captured a lot of those fun feelings.
But what I wanted, so the book is almost a pure adventure book, right? That's what I wanted, because I feel like that feeling is missing in cinema nowadays. I feel like you just don't get those real adventurous type of movie. You know, like the Goonies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. This leans so much more into like an action. Like, why is everybody a kung fu master in this VR age? Like in real life, like I don't understand.
So this is an interesting thing, and what did you? So one of the things that on individual basis were hardly worth mentioning, but it was one of those things like Death from a Thousand Cuts, where like a lot of things kept piling up in terms of going back to world building, but like inconsistencies in the world, like things where they didn't establish the rules early enough on. So later, way into the movie, you're like, wait, what? Why is that happening? How does that work? For example, there's multiple times throughout where like he has the visor on or anyone, and he pulls the visor up right when he's trying to interact with the real world. But there's a couple times where he still has the visor on, or maybe Artemis does, and they're referencing something they can see in the real world.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
You can see through the visor? What kind of immersion is that if you can see through the visor?
As somebody who works in VR and does a lot of things in VR, the ability to change your view would be just catastrophic. That would like just ruin everything.
Like, and so I was like, wait, what the heck? If there's some way to do that, they have to establish what that is earlier. And then another thing,
you press a button on your thing and it goes semi-translucent.
but they never establish. Just all of a sudden they're able to like
that.
see something in the real world while they still are in the Oasis. Another thing too is like and a lot of the opening kind of credit roll and title sequence is you're seeing all the people doing the motion, and so this idea is that you're still doing the motion in the treadmill, right? You're still physically doing motions that mimic what is happening in the Oasis, but then sometimes you don't. Like right, like it's just like there's no consistency.
Well, I think it's kind of covered in the book that there is a huge variety in how you can control the game.
But that's never covered in the movie.
So,
I'm not even saying
that's
Like
true.
I would have appreciated a scene where it was like a fat person in the real world was like, well, this is a lot of technically. I'm physically moving in the real world. Like I'm tired. I can't move anymore. Like I need to take.
And
a
if
break.
they had a rule like I'm just going to set it to auto run. Oh,
Yeah.
we get it now. There are ways you can do it. Or like obviously everyone's not a kung fu master, so no one's really. But there's a couple scenes, and this is what I mean. Where it's like it feels kind of surprising coming from Spielberg. So there's a scene, the dance scene, when they go to the. So early on, they make a point of cutting back to Wade of shots of him in the real world with the visor on, and he's doing specific actions. And then they go to the dance scene, and he turns on the dance protocol and staying alive, whatever.
Fever protocol.
And he's doing all these moves, and then they cut back to him, and he's just sitting in a chair. Right. It's like, wait, you were just acting out things, and now you're not acting. Like
that goes back to the world building, because in the book they explain that's a thing he purchased.
Yeah.
Look, buy this thing, hit the button, and then you'll be awesome on the dance floor, even if you aren't. But it's not enough of the world building to really establish these kind of rules.
Oh, man, now I don't like the movie as much.
Well, each one of those things to me was not like they're insignificant, but there was so many.
The worst part was at the end when they were driving down the streets and people were physically running out in the street.
Yeah,
well, that's the other thing. Like, I get that everyone's always in the Oasis all the time. Like they established that really well, but you're not walking down the sidewalk in public doing it. People would be sitting on benches at least, or they're not just like. I guess there's still some common sense.
I never thought I'd reference this movie as a positive example of like.
Oh God, where are we going?
I'm gonna reference James Cameron's Avatar. So I think that it did a good job. Well, first off, it had a lot of the voiceover narration with Sam Worthington talking about Pandora, it's world, you got a rough and tough tumble, but. Like
that's exactly what the word.
But Sam Worthington, it establishes his character at least a little bit before he becomes his avatar, and it also shows him trying to whoa, look at this stuff. I got a tail. What's going on? Yeah. This is crazy. He has to learn how to live in this world, and we are learning it with him. Whereas Wade is already full. He's like, I'm freaking awesome, and I can do whatever I want.
So and in the book, when they're describing it, you could just dump all the description and you get it out. But in the film, you have to be a little more clever with it. And I just felt like they had opportunities for that cleverness that I was disappointed weren't there, because I felt like, I was expecting some cool way to establish how the visor works and how this works in a very simple, background shot or kind of nonchalant kind of thing. And to me, those things never really
I like what he said, because I think it was when I was watching the movie, this stood out to me because of the way it was handled in the book, obviously, but it would also have been a lot better. So in the book, before he ever even goes into the Oasis, really, they describe his living conditions and like him chilling on freaking washer dryer and stuff like that. So by the time he gets into the Oasis, you're like, oh, this is a huge step up in his lifestyle. So I can see why he loves it so much, right? Like, but they instead they mix that up, and he's almost immediately in Oasis in the movie instead, and then we later see like his like. It's just one of those things where I feel like it could have benefited from knowing just that little bit more about Wade and his life before his escapism kicked in.
Yeah,
right.
or like having a character in the movie who was new to the world.
Yeah, it didn't have to be Wade. Like,
didn't have to be
you
Wade.
needed some avatar for the audience.
Somebody new to their team was like, "Whoa, I'm kind of just getting this," and like you see them develop along the way.
You know, and that actually would have gone back. That would have jived with your earlier idea of having this whole contest kick off right after Halliday died, because maybe the character just, he's poor, he just now was able to obtain, oh man, a contest?
Yeah.
Let me go pull a VR rig out of the garbage and fix it, and now I'm finally in the thing. And
Also, we need to talk about this. The main villain, corporate guy, he needed to have a significantly better motivation. Like the one scene that I was really hoping, when he has the one-on-one with Wade, and you figure out that he's through his earpiece.
Yeah,
he's
that
actually
scene
getting
was
all the
real.
information.
I thought that was one of the funniest scenes.
It was a good scene,
pretty good.
But I really would have wished that he actually like enjoyed all the pop culture references and all the things just like Wade, but he went about it the wrong way. Like he was the anti-Wade.
Well,
the way that
I think to me it was a very intentional meta thing. Like, it's funny because the film is in a way itself, but it's playing on. I think they're making a specific change or good, tweak to the book, in that it's these corporations and stuff that are referencing what the book is about. Oh, I know this trivia, which was the book, but that's not what the movie's about. And the people who are trying to pretend that I know what this is, they don't understand the spirit of what kind of the fun is supposed to be. They're gatekeeping, and that's not what it's supposed to be about, right?
Why have him be the main villain?
Well,
he's never gonna win. It's a main villain who is.
I do think they didn't do good. There's the one scene where they kind of show like, oh, we could legally get away with 80% of the screen time for ad revenue before the seizure. That was one snippet. There wasn't enough though.
For net neutrality conversation being such a big thing right now, and that being so inherently tied into like the villain's motivation. How is that not a bigger thing?
Yeah,
He's taken advantage of.
Other than he's the big bad guy, and they want to control the Oasis, but you never get a sense of the stakes.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Again, the world building.
Yeah,
there's all those things. It's hacked up.
You gotta know why they gotta do some bad stuff, so you know why they're bad. Other than blow up ants we don't care about. That's not that bad.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. So I just want to take a break for a moment. Just based upon our initial
Well, actually, let's take a break. Let's kind of wrap it up. What are kind of some of our final?
Well, I was gonna say we've done a lot of things saying what we didn't like. I don't think we've ever talked about things that we really liked.
Well, there was not.
Well, let's say what was your favorite scene? Chewy, what was your favorite scene?
I'm not prepared for this question. Come back to me.
Oh, wait, can I say one more thing before we get to that?
Okay.
I feel like
grant you this
movie should have been the best 3D viewing experience of all time. Like with what it had going for it.
Lame. I barely remember.
That conversation's kind of another conversation, but I feel like 3D's just over it.
Yeah, but I feel like if anything,
part of it is me being better paying $21 for the ticket, but I feel like 3D's.
I have seen films that I think were better for 3D, and I was hoping, and this one. It didn't hurt, I guess, but it was nothing.
Yeah. It should have been so much more. Like the amount that you should be able to do in a 3D, like it should have felt like we stepped into the Oasis, and it.
I took my glasses off for half the movie.
It didn't get there, like in the same way that like you step into gravity and it's like, oh, I'm in space, cool.
Yeah.
Like.
It definitely was that, not that.
Which
it should have been in VR.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what it really should have been.
Now
It's when you come back from the moon and you're like, oh yeah, Earth has gravity.
But I mean, like, I gotta think that like. If there was anything that Spielberg wanted to do, he had to have wanted you to feel like the audience was in the Oasis. So I would say because of that,
there were a lot of moving shots, like active shots and stuff, more than I'm used to seeing Spielberg do.
I mean, I thought the camera work and stuff with all that was stuff, but I agree. I think just like I will say that I wish that some things were a little slower. Like I wish not slower, but took their time a little bit more. Like. I think one of the reasons why I was kind of excited for it coming in is because the trailers. They did, for me anyways, the last couple trailers before the film came out got me excited because obviously trailers, they're designed to do that, but they allow you to kind of like, just relish in the spectacle of a lot of those shots and, the soundtrack playing and stuff. In the film, it never felt like we're able to just, like, enjoy what the Oasis was, right? It was always like, boom, 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 this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And it's just like, give me some time to really feel why these people are always in here. Other than just like, right? Like, that was kind of what I was missing a little bit too.
Okay.
All right, so
agree.
let's go back to what I was saying.
Okay.
Let's just say something positive about it.
Okay.
So let's say our favorite scene. So I mean, just to start you off, I'd say I really enjoyed the Shining scene. I thought that was really well done. I thought the recreation and
The Shining scene, I think, was a highlight for sure.
I thought that was really well done.
And it was unexpected.
And that was
Very
unexpected.
unexpected.
It wasn't in the
Again,
book,
because it
which
wasn't
was-
an 80s pop culture reference. It's Shining was like 70s or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really well executed, and it kind of granted.
and that was a really brilliant way of showing how like playing on nostalgia in a way that adds to it, right? Because just like all things, part of the nostalgia is that you want to try to recreate that feeling that you had when you experienced it for the first time. But that's impossible. You never can, right? But when you tell friends like, oh, you got to watch this, because you want to experience vicariously through them. And that's what we were doing through H, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really smart way of showing that, like, we're kind of we know what's happening. That's exactly what playing on nostalgia, like, at its best, is what that scene embodied for me. So I enjoyed that scene a lot, too.
All right,
Okay.
Vance, what was your favorite scene?
I liked the race because it was what I was hoping the whole movie would kind of feel like. I wanted the movie to feel like a race and to feel like I was on the edge of my seat, like I don't know who's gonna get this thing first. Like I wanted the movie to be a race from beginning to end. I wanted to feel like, man, that was a crazy adrenaline fueled thrill ride. Like, but a race is easy to like understand because there's a starting line and there's a finish line.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like the movie lost its finish line. Also, its track. It felt like it didn't have a track that I could follow.
It wasn't a race. There's just cars going.
Except the literal race that happened in the first event.
I was gonna say it wasn't going backwards the whole time.
You have to watch the movie in reverse to really experience it.
Okay.
There's Easter egg at the opening.
Maybe.
All right, Ryan, what about you? What say you, good Ryan, sir?
I'm trying to think of. I mean, I really did like the Shining scene. Probably because that's one of my favorite movies of all time. But I guess I just for the finally getting to see like a Gundam fight, I guess. I don't know.
The Gundam
I mean, we
I thought
never
that
really
was a cool
seen
moment.
that.
In
It was a
general, I
cool
thought that battle
fight.
scene was really well done.
It really makes
Yeah,
me want a
so-
Gundam movie.
Right, exactly. And I was like, we haven't really gotten that ever, so it was cool to see what it might be like if we did.
In general, I thought the whole battle was really done. I think I like The Shining and all that stuff. I think one of my favorite was the final scene in Halliday's old house. That scene was kind of in the book, but I thought it was really smart for them to move that to the kind of the climactic character moment at the end, right? I thought it was a really good way to really hone in on what the film was about. It was less about just the nostalgia. It was more about the character. And I think that was what I was hoping for. They were going to be able to kind of pepper throughout the rest of the film, and it kind of came up lacking for me. But that film, I think, kind of really embodied some of the best parts of what they were trying to do.
Okay.
Anyway.
Chewy, we gave you plenty of time to think about
I
your
really
thoughts.
like that Halliday was played like Steve Brule.
That was really good. Yeah. I thought he was really good, but it was very much Steve. Like, it was just,
Seriously, no, I don't know if I can pinpoint a scene in particular, but I like Halliday's portrayal. I also really liked H as a character. I thought, I don't know. I liked H in the book, and I liked the portrayal. It's cool.
You want to do final thoughts now?
Yeah, final
Should
thoughts.
we recommend it or not?
Yeah, I mean,
How many chunks would we give it? 1 out of 5 chunks.
I would.
What is it? How
I
many
will say, for the
frozen-
most
what
part,
is it?
I do think that us knowing who we are, we're probably not just because we're more critical of just like film and kind of entertainment in general, but I think because of us reading the books or the book, and also just being more critical towards what the subject of the film is about, the pop culture and video games and stuff. I think a general audience who's less savvy than us, and that comes across as condescending than what I mean it to, probably will enjoy it more. So I would recommend it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, I guess so. Kind of, I guess piggybacking off that, maybe we'll see where this goes. I think this movie kind of marks maybe a turn in how we engage in pop culture. Like, it feels like for the past decade or so, we have now been permitted to enjoy things as like complete in fully immersed geekdom. Like we can we can sit down and totally geek out on something, right? At least that's how it's kind of felt like I've been enabled to engage in things. Whereas before that, it felt like you had to always have a sense of irony in your approach of any like film or whatever. And I feel like not necessarily because of this film or the book, but it's maybe the reflections of that. But is now marking a turn back to irony, and we can't like so. I think that is evidenced by the backlash that we spoke about earlier to the book and its overindulgent nostalgia.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the book was written in a time where that was safe and that was great, and that's why we all enjoyed it. And Sean, you mentioned that you kind of looking back at the book now, you felt like, yeah, it was good and fun, but it wasn't quite the greatness that we perceived it to be upon initial reading.
Yeah,
right. So, and I think I'm subjective.
Yeah,
I think we all
fair.
are. So.
I think most than the society, a lot of cultures in general. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Vince,
Thoughts,
the
Vince?
man,
Anyone else?
The myth, the legend.
Don't expect a lot of good characters. Turn your brain off. Find a good, comfortable, hopefully reclining seat in the theater. If you wear 3D glasses, don't wear normal glasses over them, and you will walk out of it
Having seen a movie.
And for that reason, I give it 3.5 chunks.
Okay.
Out of 5.
Who knows how many?
How many? Okay. Chris, thoughts?
Okay, so I mean, we could talk about this movie for a lot longer than we have.
Sure.
But do we have to?
I don't feel like
Let's
that.
not do that.
Having worked in VR and why is that funny?
No, because it makes it sound like you were in VR
Like,
and that's
you're-
where you work.
As someone
you're an
who
expert.
has found Halliday's Easter
I need
egg,
you
I
to
can-
start every
As the
opinion.
soul,
No, this
that's
is
what it
what
sounds
listen,
proprietary.
Listen,
Look,
What do you
until
think
you
about
have
this
a child.
hamburger? As a person that's worked in
Look,
VR.
until you have a child. Until you have a child. That's all I have to say.
Chris, continue.
All right, so I came into this looking and hoping, and maybe I can't say whether it does or doesn't. I was hoping that this would kind of open people's eyes to the potential of VR. Having worked in the company that put out Lone Echo, Echo Arena, and Echo Lobby, the Echo Lobby being like an interactive place where you just interact with people as you please in a VR space. I was hoping that this movie would sell VR well, and that's something I'm not sure it does.
I mean, you have a very specific take on it.
It's
I'm not
also-
saying it's not valid. I just...
But
Yeah.
on
So,
it,
no, who else is... So you said that you can't say whether it does or does not. Then who can?
You are a man who works in VR after all.
You have to be able
well,
to tell
it's
us.
just one of those things where I can't decide whether it does or doesn't because it's yet to be seen, right? Like,
recommend the movie.
Yeah.
would I recommend the movie? Would I recommend the movie? Would I recommend the movie? Would I? Yeah, I mean, I agree with Vince. I'd probably give it like 3.5. It's an enjoyable popcorn flick for one viewing, and you get all the yeah, look at friggin' Ninja Turtles. Yeah, look at Battletoads, Gundam, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's fun for one viewing to just be like, oh, that's a cool reference. That's a cool reference.
I give it a very soft recommendation. I give it a very tepid recommendation. I would say I could see this being a movie that a lot of people would just enjoy for the candy aspect of it, just the surface level. I could also see this annoying a lot of people, and I kind of got one foot in each side.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I don't feel I think overall I enjoyed the experience, but I don't feel the need to ever watch it again. I kind of put that in that category.
I
So
don't think the movie will be remembered. And definitely for this year with Avengers Infinity War coming out in a month, I could see this movie not being remembered by a lot of people.
yeah, I feel like that's the thing. You kind of said you watch it once, whatever. That's kind of where I feel like, all right, cool. That was a good night out at the movies, but I'm not. That's it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all can agree in that it was not what we were like. It wasn't the pinnacle tentpole kind of thing that maybe they want. Well, the studio and Spielberg obviously want it to be, but I think some of us were hoping it would be as well.
Let's all just acknowledge that reality is real.
Yeah.
and that Big Brother should prevent us from playing
I'm not
video
going to acknowledge
games
that
on
reality's real.
Tuesdays.
It's been
and
proven
Thursdays.
on a simulation.
Science, yeah.
We
Science
need
is-
Big Brother to tell us we can't play video games on Tuesdays
Yeah.
and Thursdays. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we'll grow out of control.
I love that little thing.
That was
it's
kinda
like,
fun. Like,
you can-
what?
So we're okay as long we're fine, but just Tuesday and Thursdays. The rest of it, yeah, spend as much time as you want in the Oasis.
Make up for the Tuesdays and Thursdays on the other days
By
of the week.
binging on the.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, that's Ready Player One. Yeah, go see it. I guess for the most, I felt like the little needle on the spectrum was more towards go see it. You'll probably have fun.
Man, I just wish it was a good old-fashioned adventure movie.
Yeah,
I don't know what you
That's
mean by that.
that's really what I wanted out of that. You know, I wanted
Like
to go.
National Treasure.
I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I wanted
Look,
to
we
go
could
on
just
an
go
adventure.
see. We could just go watch National Treasure.
I'm just
Let's
we
go do
could
that
do
right
that.
now.
Let's go watch it.
Next
on the
week's
podcast.
episode.
Well, but
National
okay,
Treasure.
let's think about like the old Indiana Jones movies. Those are way more adventure than they are action.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
wanted.
Well, okay, yeah, I suppose. I'm that. Yeah, you're right. It was not quite as much of that. That doesn't necessarily mean it. You know, that's not a purely objective criticism, right?
How dare you.
I think we're past our stopping point on
Yeah.
this conversation, just like the movie was 20 minutes before it ended.
Yeah.
good.
Okay, so anyways, yeah, ready.
Yeah.
That was Ready Player One. Before we go though, we just want to kind of recap that this part of the show we're going to be normally hearing from you guys. Ideally, you'll be emailing us and let us know what you think and what you want us to talk about, and maybe we'll answer some questions. If you have questions for us, discussion topics, we're going to be taking this time out of every episode to bring that up. So if you do have any questions or ideas, please contact us. You can email us at yumchunks@gmail.com. You could go to our Facebook page, leave a comment on Facebook, message us on Facebook Messenger, all that's good. You can go to our YouTube channel where this will be posted as well we'll have it posted up as a video, and you can leave a comment in the video below. What else do we got? I don't know. Send us a normal letter.
Or call in.
Call in.
Call in right now if you're listening
Yeah.
now. Call in. Yeah, no, but we're still kind of just this project is kind of in development at the moment. I got my DP10 here. We're all the ideas for a different format. We're not locked into anything. So if you guys have ideas, things you want us to talk about, or just ideas for how to make this
Any
a cool
feedback
project.
on the format?
Exactly.
Like if you think there's a better way we can discuss things in a more efficient way, like any feedback would
Tell
be
us what we're bad
helpful.
at.
Yeah.
Tell us what you hate about our voices.
We'll try to do accents if you want.
Yeah, you can't tell us what you don't like about how we look anymore.
Anymore.
I remember all the hate mail.
You guys are just, oh God.
Something about your faces. That's
When
what
I was
punch
on
you.
Gorecast, they always called me Peter Griffin. They always said you were an old woman.
Oh, did they?
A couple times they said that Brian looks like an old woman.
But that's all show, Governor.
That's our show. That's the very first.
That's
First annual-
episode one.
First only know this
annual.
one you see here now.
We'll hopefully be doing these very regularly. If not weekly, then bi-weekly. We'll find what works. And depending on how often you guys listen, what you guys want to have us talk about, we'll see when we can do it.
Tell your friends.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks for like us on the things to like and subscribe. Please subscribe.
Carter, say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right, we're good.
Oh, my son is here.
They're not going to
He's
believe you have
zombie.
children if you don't sing it.
Okay, yeah.
Damien.
Bye.
By the studio, I mean the kitchen.
Also, we're no longer in Cat Box